So something you may or may not know about me is that I am currently a student right now. I am a student at Dakota Wesleyan University, and I am going through a process called the Nonprofit Church Leadership Certification Program, and it will eventually become an MBA, like an extra degree. And if you're thinking, she's crazy, you're right. To be fair, I committed to this before Ida. And I almost quit, but I decided not to. And mostly that is in part because I was scholarshiped for this. The United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana selects clergy people. And so who can turn down a free degree? I mean, I couldn't do it, and especially because it's so practical. And this is crazy for me because when I finished seminary, which was only about 5 years ago, I literally walked across that stage thinking, I am never going back to school again. I am done. And this really hasn't been so bad, mostly because in this particular education program, I have yet to have one test. I hate tests. Anybody else have test anxiety? Like hate tests, like get sick to my stomach, whether it's a medical test or an actual test that you're taking in school. I don't like any tests at all, and easy to find. And I hear now, like in high school, you're lucky if you get a multiple choice, right? Everything is all this written stuff. You have to explain how you know the answer score on ACT. And so my mom got me an ACT tutor, and one of the things she said is the test makers are out to there are going to be multiple correct options, right? It's not just one right answer. There could be all right answers, or worse, all wrong answers, right? And then you have to decide, to get credit, you have to decide which is the most correct or which is the least incorrect, right? And it's crazy to me because I am so happy, I hate all tests, but I would much prefer a question with a clear-cut answer. I like 5 times 5 is 25, right? I also really like multiple choice tests that have normal answers on them where you can easily find the right answer. But the truth is that just like those tests get difficult, life for life to be simple and clear-cut and to offer us clear paths where you can easily, we do in life when we're walking the hard road, what we do in life when we come across these challenges, these difficult circumstances, maybe where things are not clear-cut and black and white, and how do we decide what is the right, even the right question? Should we really be thinking about what is the right answer when instead there might be another path? Now, I just want to kind of fill you in on the context of this passage in case you need a little brain refresher. We mentioned Lazarus and we sung about Lazarus this morning, and that is because that's the context of this passage. So just before Jesus is over at Mary and Martha's house for dinner, he raised Lazarus from the dead. And if you remember that story, Mary and Martha are upset. They send for Jesus. Jesus is out on tour, right? Doing his ministry thing. And he says to his disciples at the time, no, we're not going to be able to make it back for that. He might get sick. He's going to be okay. He knew that, right? And so when he got there, Mary and Martha, they're so upset, they're weeping. Jesus cries with them, right? And he says to Mary at the time when she's like, if you had only been here, Lazarus wouldn't have died. And he says to her, I am the resurrection. Do you believe that? And she says, yes. And then he raises Lazarus from the dead. Now, if you open up the Gospel of John and you're reading along, the very next thing that happens in the series of events is they apparently go back to Mary and Martha's house for dinner. That's an interesting dinner party, if you ask me, But these are the same sisters, if you know the story of Mary and Martha, when Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus and Martha's in the kitchen and she's mad, right, that Mary is at the feet of Jesus. These are the same sisters. So is it any wonder that Martha is back home cooking dinner, right, for Jesus and his disciples? And is it any wonder that once again we find Mary sitting at Jesus' feet. Now, when you look at this story, what the passage tells us, what John tells us, is that Mary has taken this very expensive perfume made of pure nard. Anybody ever use essential oils, like Young Living people in the room or something? Okay, so if you buy a little bitty thing like this big of sacred frankincense, who wants to say how much it is? It's $100 plus. $100 plus. But that doesn't even come close. Stuff that Mary is using cost, okay? We're not talking about a $100 little bottle of oil here. We're talking about like those $1,000 face creams that celebrities put all over their faces every day. You know, like what the scriptures tell us is that the amount of money that it cost for this ointment that she had was like $20,000 in real dollars for us today. $20,000. That's like a good part-time job, you know? For some people, that's a not-so-good full-time job, right? And so we have this situation where she is sort of like, in Judas's opinion, being wasteful with this stuff. And just to give you an idea, like, it is ointment. It's not oil. It's like a lotion or a cream, okay? And it's made out of this very sacred and difficult to find flour, which is why it's so expensive. And by the way, this also gives you a little bit of an eye into the fact that Mary's got money, right? Like, and one of the things that Mary has been doing in her life since she had her Jesus moment is she has been supporting Jesus. She has been helping Jesus and the disciples do their ministry, okay? So here they are in the room, and I just want you to imagine this, right? Like Mary gets down on her knees, rubs Jesus' feet, massages his feet, and then starts wiping it off with her hair. And I'm just like, that's where you lose me. I have long hair. Mia, would you wipe Jesus' feet with your hair? So it's weird to us because none of us would ever think to clean anything with our hair. Guys in the room, women never think of that. That does not ever cross our minds. We get a towel or a rag or something. Right, exactly. So there is some significance here. That's why I'm bringing this to your attention. In Jewish culture, a woman's hair was considered her glory. A woman's hair is quite possibly the most valuable thing on her body. It was the most beautiful thing. That's why it was meant to be covered. They were supposed to take good care of their hair. And y'all might remember I taught a long time ago, so if you forgot, no worries. But I talked to y'all about how when the widow put her coins in, that those coins came off of a kind of a jeweled headband, that women would even wear that on their head, and it was like their dowry for when they got married to a man. So the hair on a woman in Jewish culture is the most valuable, most beautiful thing that she may own, right? And so here she is taking her most valuable possession, most likely, this ointment, and her most valuable asset, and taking care of the dirtiest part of Jesus' body with it. Can you see that, how beautiful that is? And so here she is, like Mary in this moment is offering her very best to Jesus. She is giving her the most beautiful thing that she can offer of herself in this moment is this ointment and her hair. And let's not forget the room full of people who are judging her while she's doing it, particularly Judas, right? So let's talk about him for a second. I just need y'all to know that in the Gospel of Mark, the parentheses don't exist, okay? And so I want y'all to realize that the stuff in the parentheses really is John's commentary. You can go with it or not, that's up to you. But that's John's interpretation. You can tell he don't really like Judas a whole lot by the time he's writing this story. But Mark's gospel was actually written about 30 to 40 years earlier than that. And he leaves that little bit out. And I bring that to your attention because it is really easy to look at this passage and get all worked up about what a terrible person Judas is, that he should just shut up. He's being a jerk. We don't need to listen to what he has to say. But he actually is making a point, like an important point that is worth looking at. So Judas, he's angry at this point, right? We're getting really close to the time that he's about to betray Jesus. And he's mad. He's frustrated that Jesus has not taken Jerusalem back. He's frustrated that Jesus is not operating in the same way that he would choose to operate. And so he sees this happening, and instead of seeing Mary loving Jesus, instead of seeing Mary who is sacrificing and giving the most beautiful thing that she can possibly give to Jesus, he doesn't see that at all. He sees waste. That is a waste. And when we're talking about $20,000 a year on a pedicure, he has a point, right? He has a point. We can see where he's coming from. Take a note, everybody in the room, even people you don't like, even people who make bad choices, still have valuable things to say sometimes, right? And he's saying this like, why in the world are we taking this money and using it on someone's feet when it could literally have fed a whole town tonight? Or it could have maybe even built a shelter for someone who doesn't have a place to live, right? Like that doesn't seem like a reasonable or responsible thing to do. And so his question is like, there's two options here, right? You can either rub this ointment all over Jesus' feet. That's option number one. Or you can sell the ointment and care for the poor. That's option number two. Which one's the right one? Which one's the right answer? There isn't a right answer. Aren't both of those things wonderful things? Aren't both of those things good to do? Right? Aren't both of those things acceptable? But here, Judas is like, there's only one right answer. And I throw this out to y'all because I wonder how many times in your own life are you so stressed about picking the right answer instead of just offering the most beautiful, best part of yourself that you can in that moment? And how much does stressing over whether I'm getting it right push you away from God instead of bringing you close to God? Think about that for a second. Think about the number of times where you are stressed about whether you're doing the right thing, even if you're doing the best you can, if it's good enough, if it's the right thing. And how would your faith life change? How would your relationship with Jesus change if instead of being so worried and anxious about whether you're doing it right or whether you're good enough, was shifted to, I just need to offer the very best of myself that I can offer in this moment? And sometimes that might look like creating a beautiful worship service or serving as the usher in worship or helping with community. Sometimes that might look like worship. Sometimes that might look like getting tents for people in the city. Sometimes that might look like showing up here and helping in the food pantry. Sometimes that might look like hanging out in the parking lot. It's not that one is better than the other or more important than the other. All are needed, right? All are needed. Did Jesus care about the poor? Absolutely, he cared about the poor. Was he saying in this moment, no, you don't need to care about the poor, you need to pour this oil on my feet? That's not what he was saying, right? You can look at Jesus' actions, his entire ministry, and you see that he cares for the poor. But what he is saying to Judas and to everyone else in the room is, do not judge this woman who is giving me the very best of herself and showing me that she loves me in the way that she can in this moment. And I just want to give that invitation to y'all this morning. That is truly the invitation of walking the hard road of this life of faith, of your relationship with God. It's not about whether or not you're getting the answers right on the test. This road is not about being on a long test. And if you pass, you get to go to heaven at the end. It's about developing a relationship with Jesus. And if you could just commit to saying, I will give the very best of myself at each and every moment, then you are doing the most beautiful, most wonderful thing that you can do. And if other people come to judge you for that, you hear the words of Jesus, who says to Judas, leave her alone. Leave her alone. She is giving me what she can. And then lastly, I just want to say that's a lesson for us. That's a lesson for us. Because how often do we bicker or fight or complain or whatever because we don't think somebody else is doing the right thing in their faith life? Or even in the church? Well, what's more important? Is it church on Sunday morning? Is it small groups during the week? Is it the food pantry? They're all important. They're all important, right? And we need to be participating in all of them. So as we come forward in just a few minutes for communion, I just want to offer you the opportunity. We're going to take a moment of silence and pray. I want to just reframe what it looks like to come to communion today. You are a forgiven people. You are a redeemed people. That's why Jesus died on the cross for you. But how often do you come forward to this table with your head hung low, feeling guilty or ashamed because you don't feel good enough? And what does it look like to make your way to this table